Hey guys, welcome to an interesting video on Wild Rift. So today we're back with the patch rundown for patch 6.3D. And it's coming pretty much, I feel, at an expected time. I was expecting an update this week considering how often Wild Rift updates nowadays, but it has been 2 weeks, I believe, since the last update. So there is going to be quite a number of champion changes, and we're going to talk about all of them. So the first big one is actually going to be Yuumi. So Yuumi is finally getting her rework that's coming out on the 27th of November, and I'm honestly not too sure how I feel about this. I think this is changing her to be a bit more similar to the PC version, where basically you're now going to have a best friend mechanic. So basically whenever you kill an enemy champion or a minion, you will gain friendship, right? Which is going to be a new kind of, I believe, a stackable kind of thing. So when you have the person with the highest friendship on your team becomes the best friend, and this will of course empower the other abilities. So this has a couple implications. Of course, Yuumi is the support, generally will linear the ADC, so by default generally the ADC will be your best friend. So there are pros and cons to this. So one of the, I guess the pro for me is that Yuumi normally will want to stay on the ADC nowadays, since all her abilities get buffed when she's on the ADC. But the con is that if the ADC is feeding, Yuumi is going to be a lot less useful than what she was. Now, alternatively, if the ADC dies like 2 to 3 times in the laning phase, Yuumi can immediately abandon the ADC and try to go to another champion and try to make that champion her best friend, but it's going to take a while for that to happen. So it's whether you want to go sunk cost fallacy with the ADC, hope that you and they scale and they come back in the game later on, or if you want to just ditch them and go for somebody else. So she of course has that shield passive, but now what basically she gets is she still gets a shield with an 18-second cooldown, and of course you can alright, that's the old one. So when you damage an enemy champion, she heals herself, and the allies also heal. So it's no longer a shield, but it's a heal instead. Now, why is this the case? Well, let's actually jump over to her E. So her E used to be the heal and then followed by 3 more heals. Now instead you're getting a 10-second cooldown at all ranks, and instead of healing herself, she is now going to so she's still gonna heal herself and gain attack speed. However, she no longer is going to heal an ally, because instead she grants a shield and then gains attack speed, and while the shield is active, your ally also gains movement speed. So basically the heal now goes to the passive, and the E is now a shield. So basically they're kind of swapping that around. Now obviously I personally feel having a heal on demand is more useful than having a shield on demand, but at the end of the day, both heals and shields both kind of block, quote unquote, block damage, because heals just give you more health to take more damage, and shields just block more damage. But the main reason why I think heals are better, because heals are permanent, whereas shields will just drop off and then you're going to go back to whatever health you had. So it in that sense, it's kind of a nerf, right? So her Q now gets a best friend bonus. When it's attached, it slows enemies hit, and hitting an enemy champion grants bonus damage, right? So more damage. The slow is going to now scale up, which is a huge buff, and the base stats are going up. So Q maxing might be the way to go now, or it might still be E maxing. I believe you want to max Q because the slow you get is insane. Damage increase is pretty good, and now the cooldown is the same at all ranks. But you still get a nice scaling of the shield, so I'm not quite sure, but we'll have to see. So now the W best friend bonus will give Yuumi increased heal and shield power, and the best friend will get extra healing, and it no longer gives adaptive force. And finally, the final chapter, it's still going to deal damage and slow, and each additional wave hit, the slow increases by 10%. So when you get hit by like 2-3 waves, the slow is going to be pretty nasty, and subsequent waves deal a bit less damage, I believe. Yeah, it's going to deal a bit less damage, and then this is the interesting part. So each wave that hits heals the ally champion, right? And excess healing is converted to shielding. So although you don't have healing on your E anymore, when you ult in with your ult, you will still heal from the ult instead, right? And the best friend bonus increases the healing. So overall, it's a very interesting change. I'm not quite sure if this is a buff or nerf, because they did take a lot of power out of her E. They put it into her ult and her Q instead. So her Q now becomes a lot better of a poke tool. And the slow you get is also pretty insane, but at the same time, her E, I feel, just becomes a lot weaker, because I think shielding is just worse than healing in general. So we'll have to see if how that changes Yuumi. Now Yuumi is my permaban, so I'm not really sure how she is even now, because I just think she's pretty strong, so I always ban her. but we'll have to see. So Jace gets a little bit of extra health regen, as well as his lightning field, restoring more mana and dealing a bit more damage. Now I'm not gonna lie, I don't really think this changes anything, right? Extra health regen of 2.5 is kind of meh. It's alright. This is lightning field is one of his least important abilities. Extra mana restored is not very important. Total damage, getting extra damage is okay, I guess, but it's just not a very big change in my opinion. Gragas, cooldown of his passive is getting reduced, and it's now actually scaling down. So I believe this is whenever you rank up your ult. So this is at level 5, 11, 5, 9, and 13. You're gonna get this up faster. Small buff, but pretty good. Barrel roll cooldown is reduced by 5 seconds, and the damage to minions is now increased. So better wave clear. This is a pretty big change, pretty big buff for Gragas. And his W base damage is also going up by a little bit. Now you normally max this last, so it's kind of a 1-point wonder. So 15 extra base damage at the start is going to come in handy, but overall, it's just a tiny, not tiny, but it's a decent buff to Gragas overall. Now Zeri, you guys have heard me complaining about how weak she is. She's getting 4 extra base AD, which is a very huge buff, right? Giving a ADC extra base AD is always going to be huge, because you auto attack so many times over the course of the game. This leads to a lot of extra damage overall. And the cooldown on her E is going down slightly, and it's just slightly. I really don't think this matters all that much. I think the 4 base AD buff is a lot better, a lot bigger of a change. Now Rumble base damage is going down, because Rumble base damages are honestly too high. The tank Rumble is getting popular, where you just build tank and you rely on your Q base damage. So they are lowering the Q base damage, and the danger zone damage also going down in compensation. I just think it's because of the popularity of tank Rumble, so this definitely just makes sense. Now Shyvana's W damage per second is going down very slightly, 5, but this 5 is 5 on every tick of damage. So at the end of the day, it's actually more significant than it initially appears. And the Flame Breath, the E damage, is also going down by both champion level, multiplier, as well as just base. So overall, Shyvana's just getting a bunch of nerfs. I do think Shyvana's actually in a pretty good spot right now, because when I do see her picked, I think she actually does pretty decent. So I think it's a good nerf. Now Viego, of course, has been one of the top junglers for the longest time. Definitely makes sense that he gets nerfed. I personally have been playing Viego in the jungle a lot as well. I'm planning to make some videos on him soon, but he is getting a nerf. So his stat base damage is going down by 5 in all ranks. Not the biggest nerf in the world. His ulti is getting a 10% AD reduction, so that matters, because you use your ulti a lot, considering you reset off your ulti quite a bit. But overall, a nice combo of nerfs to Viego to take him down a peg. I still think he's going to be a top tier jungler, but definitely going to do a bit less damage. Now Lee Sin, I think, also is a top tier jungler, and although he's not very popular nowadays, the people who do know how to play him do make him seem like he does a lot of damage. So Q, of course, and ult are the two main issues with Lee Sin damage. So Q getting a slight AD ratio nerf on both parts of it, and the ult also getting a bonus AD ratio nerf. I think this definitely just makes sense. Lee Sin is pretty strong right now, and AD getting nerfed definitely makes sense. Now what also makes sense is Lucian getting nerfed. Right, Lucian I think is one of the strongest ADCs right now. His passive getting nerfed on the second shot. The AD scaling is going to be lower in the early stages of the game, but still the same at the late game. I think this makes sense, because Lucian's strength comes from his early game and his snowballing, and his late game is not actually all that good if you don't snowball. So hitting his early game for the passive makes sense. And same thing with his Q. His Q is getting nerfed by 10 damage in all ranks. I don't think 10 damage is the biggest deal in the world, but definitely a nice slight nerf to Lucian to kind of bring him down closer to the level of the other ADCs. Now in terms of items, of course, Lethal Tempo nerf previous patch made attack speed ADCs a bit worse, so I guess they're getting compensated by Runans getting a 5% AD ratio increase in terms of the bolt damage. So benefits majority of attack speed ADCs who builds Runans. The Electrocute damage is actually getting a AD scaling decrease and AP scaling decrease. So Electrocute hasn't been touched for a very long while. I think it's like an okay rune, but maybe it just does a little bit too much damage, so they are reducing it. So the interesting thing here is Fleet Footwork. The modifier when you attack minions on melee and range are both getting reduced. On range it's getting reduced by a lot, and on melee it's getting reduced a bit. Right, so I guess I'm not quite sure why they are making this change. I mean, I kind of know why, because they don't want people to heal off of minions and use it to sustain, but people who take Fleet take it for only one of 3 reasons. Either they take it for the sustain, the movement speed, or to get their combo off faster with the attack speed. Sometimes all 3, or sometimes 2 out of 3. So the sustain is really useful in lane, and the fact that you now have to hit a champion instead of a minion kind of defeats the purpose a little bit, because sometimes when you walk up to proc it on the champion, you get hit instead, and it kind of just offsets the amount that you heal. So definitely a nerf to Fleet. Dark Harvest base damage going from 50 to 40. I knew this was going to happen sooner or later. I did think Dark Harvest is a very strong rune when it came out, and it's finally getting a nerf. Sorry, Empowered Attack now. Ranged champions now will deal 80% damage. Now, not many ranged champions take Empowered Attack. The only one that comes to mind immediately is Senna. Senna, of course, does take Empowered Attack because she doesn't really have a lot better choices there. But not that many ranged champions actually take this one, so I don't think it's a very, very big deal. Scorch damage also going down by like 7 damage at all ranks. And that's pretty much it for the patch. So of course, videos a lot of updated guides still to come, so stay tuned for that. Thank you guys so much for watching the video, guys, and goodbye.